Hey everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here, Amazon best-selling author, and look who I have. By your request, I've got Dr. Susan Wadia-Ells. How are you? I'm so happy you could take time out of your busy schedule. You're like the hottest ticket in functional medicine.
Really? And why would you say that?
I
Sounds
mean,
good.
yeah, I mean, without question, you have a topic that I looked at, and I'm a male, and it captivated me. I didn't want to put it down. You were talking about busting breast cancer. So again, I don't get to talk that much about it, but it was fascinating. The read is great. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Let everybody know it's the first time you've been on the podcast.
Sure. Well, I'm not a medical person. That's the first thing everybody should know. I see myself much more as an investigative journalist. I have a graduate degree in political economy from the Fletcher School, and I have a PhD in women's studies with a focus on women's psychology and autobiographical writing. So the question is, why would I even think about writing a book on preventing breast cancer? And the answer to that question is I got mad. I have had a number of friends, I'm thinking it's more than 5, who were diagnosed with an early stage breast cancer, and they were told, "Oh, we're so happy we got it early. You're fine, Jennifer, Sally, etc." And in fact, in a few years later, in one case, a decade later, they experienced what's called recurrent metastatic breast cancer. And that is, of course, a terminal degree. And that means that, or a terminal diagnosis, we should say, not a terminal degree. And that means an early death sentence. And that's what happened to each of them. And I just got mad. I said, wait a minute, all of the money that's being spent, all of the hoopla, go get your mammogram, et cetera, early prevention, stops death, et cetera. Well, it doesn't. And so I just started looking at all of the epidemiological studies on the causes of breast cancer, the statistical studies. And I was getting really annoyed because I couldn't figure out, no one seemed to know why one woman develops breast cancer and another never will. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. And then you may know of the work of Dr. Thomas Seyfried. He is a Boston College biologist. And thank goodness, I was in the right place at the right time with the right plan. And I heard about his theory, and it fit perfectly with all of the statistical studies I had been looking at for a number of years on the causes of the risks. We'd call it risks of breast cancer. They didn't know the cause, but the risks. And so I wrote him, and he quickly wrote back, and I said, well, I'm enamored. Your theory, as I understand it, makes so much sense to me. Will you review my work, or will you have one of your research assistants review my work? He said, "Oh, no. I'm doing it. I'm here on your side." So he's written an incredible foreword to my book.
It's great.
And let me just show it. I love to show off it's like my new child, right? So what we see here on the cover is the healthy cell. And then over here, we have the unhealthy cell. And this is what Dr. Seyfried's book that came out, his textbook, came out in 2012. It's what he is the first to be able to describe to the world, that this is a cancer cell and why that cancer cell is different from that healthy cell, and how the healthy cell turns into the cancer cell. So with that knowledge, I could begin to put together a book that had, based on everybody else's research, it's got nothing to do with my research, the 5 simple steps that are effective prevention steps for women so we don't get the disease, because I'm not interested in developing breast cancer.
I can't blame you on that. So what are some of the reasons, which segment of the female population is more susceptible to breast cancer?
In the United States, you can't say which anymore. Clearly, more older women, especially around everything from 50 around as women are turning into menopause, that's a big bunch of them. So that might be 45 to 55. And there are reasons why those menopausal years will, create a bump in the number of women developing breast cancer. And then, as with any of us in terms of any illness, as we get older, things start to break down. And so the proclivity to develop any kind of cancer increases. And we now understand why. But in America, women under 50 have a much higher rate of breast cancer than women of all ages, let's say in Eastern Europe, or certainly Africa, or certainly Asia. That women in the United States, it's dangerous. If women want to avoid breast cancer, they ought to leave the United States. We are this is the most dangerous environment to live in for many, many reasons that we can talk about. And so, the rate of breast cancer in women under 50, and as my book will show, there's a study that I did with a statistician, and we looked at a number of state cancer boards sent us their data on women under 50 and their annual rate of breast cancer beginning like in 1985 up until about 2005. And what you see is no matter if you're in Colorado, Florida, Massachusetts, the rate of breast cancer in women under 50 was increasing on an average of 1% to 2% a year during those 20 years. And you say, well, why is that? And you look at the fact that that's exactly when pharmaceutical companies, thanks to good old President Clinton, were now allowed to advertise their drugs on television, so that the drug companies were enabling the customer to tell the doctor what drug they wanted. And so all of a sudden birth control drugs became lifestyle drugs, and you could have your choice. And so as soon as a lot of women, young women, got on the birth control drugs, we saw those rates of breast cancer increase exponentially.
So with that increase in rate in breast cancer with the birth control pills, obviously it's an estrogen issue.
No, it's a progestin issue. Progestin is the chemical progesterone that has to be in every birth control drug. And they don't want to use natural progesterone because they can't make any money. So they're using a chemical progestin. And in 2010, and I think, Rob, this was one of the most startling, upsetting pieces of research that I discovered throughout this whole 10 or 12 years I was doing this book. And that is that in October of 2010, I guess, in the journal Nature, which we know is a preeminent scientific journal, right? A blue ribbon panel published an incredible description of exactly how progestin, when it enters a woman's body, literally attacks the breast cells. And they don't use the word mitochondria, but clearly what it's doing is it's releasing a protein called rankle that apparently is suffocating the mitochondria, the power batteries in the breast cells. And that once you have that suffocation, and we can talk about the metabolic theory, but that's what we understand now, that the first step in that initial cancer cell is when the mitochondria, the power batteries in that cell, suffocate. And it's the progestin, what they showed. It was all preclinical studies that they did. They showed that that's exactly how all the breast cancer is happening in younger women using the progestin drug.
Interesting, fascinating, great clarification.
Yeah.
Because most people in the field will say it's an excess of estrogen, but you're speaking specifically to the chemical, and that's what in
progestin.
Right. So in the United States, again, you said how loosely it's used and how voluminously it's used. Let me ask you something. Why do you describe your new book as being controversial and a good news message for women?
Well, one of the reasons we just talked about, which is the birth control drugs. Planned Parenthood, if you go to their websites, they won't tell you anything negative about birth control drugs. They apparently make a huge amount of their income, and they do a lot of good things. I always supported Planned Parenthood, but when it comes to birth control drugs, they will not publish that study. They will not even list the long-term, the connection between birth control drugs, the current use, we're talking current use of birth control drugs, and the incredible increase in breast cancer in women while they're using those drugs. So one of the reasons is, the doctors will say, it's okay, Jennifer, oh, your 15-year-old daughter has acne. Let's put her on birth control drugs. That will help the acne. And the statistical studies show us that the younger a woman is when she begins using birth control drugs, be it for contraception or they're using it for all sorts of lifestyle issues, that she's ratcheting up her risk for breast cancer. And this is why we have so many younger women developing breast cancer in the United States. Because if you look at the income, worldwide income from birth control drugs, now we know that the U.S., women of childbearing age are probably maybe 4% of the world's women of childbearing age. Isn't that what the U.S. population is, right? But U.S. women supply 47% of all the income that is generated worldwide from birth control drugs, because the U.S. can charge the most money and therefore they push the drugs like crazy. And so we have a massively disproportionate number of women in the U.S. using birth control drugs compared to Western Europe, compared to Asia. I mean, most women in Asia, they use IUDs. And here, IUDs, the hormone-free IUDs have been blocked from the U.S. market. There's another controversy. So I think every chapter, and we can talk about the 5 simple steps to prevent breast cancer, but you'll find that every chapter, all of those five steps are controversial in some way. They go against what the American Cancer Society is telling women, what Susan G. Komen is telling women, what most of the OBGYNs, most of the allopathic doctors are telling women. So it's controversial, that's for sure.
No doubt about it. You've tackled an interesting topic. Americans about 4.25% of the world's population. We use 52% of the drugs. We use 80% of the pain medications.
Okay.
And I have to tell you, I'll be frank, we use 35 million antibiotics, 29 million are in our livestock. I have been negligent to mention the 47% of what you just said. I need to add that in my armamentarium without question, because that, women are coming in my office all day long. I mean, they're the healthcare deciders in the family. So I got a text right over here. I don't know why they didn't do it. They said to me, well, if no birth control pill, can I have some other options?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Sure. Now, the best one is to have yourself fitted with a hormone-free IUD. The problem is, in the United States, the FDA has now classified hormone-free IUDs as prescription drugs. And they did that without warning, without an explanation in 1999. We used to have a lot of hormone-free IUDs on the market. Back in the 70s, I remember I had one for like 10 years. It was great, and it was able to fit me well, etc. Today, there's a one-size-fits-all that's allowed on the U.S. market, and no other hormone-free IUDs are now allowed on the U.S. market. And so the important, go to Europe, go take a vacation to Mexico. You can get a variety, makes, models, and sizes of IUDs for $20, $30, $40, $10, and have it inserted there, because You cannot, a Planned Parenthood clinic, your physician is not allowed to prescribe or give you drugs that have been manufactured in another country. It's like Bernie Sanders takes all of the Vermonters up to Canada to buy their insulin because it's 90% cheaper than buying the insulin, in northern Vermont, because the U.S. has the highest cost. So that 50-cent IUD, copper coil IUD that is available, the hormone-free IUD that is available on the U.S. market, the price is now $800. And it's a 50-cent copper coil. I think my insurance paid $30 maybe for it back in the 70s. Wow. So again, this is and chapter 10 in my book, it has 7 political action steps. So even though the majority of the book are the 5 personal steps that every individual woman needs to take, Chapter 10 are 7 political action steps that individuals, groups can take to try and lobby Congress people, lobby the FDA, lobby the president. Joe Biden and his wife Jill have had a breast cancer foundation for younger women going for many years. And so we'll see if it will be possible to have any impact on them. The question is, do the pharmaceutical companies have a much bigger control of our government today, as they have for the last 85 decades? Or will that change? Because U.S. women have the highest rate of breast cancer in the world because of the control that the pharmaceutical companies have today over the U.S. government. There's no difference in the federal cancer agencies and the pharmaceutical companies. That they're run by the same people.
Interesting. So you mentioned, what are your 5 simple prevention steps described in your books? They want some actionable steps.
All right, here we go. The first is lose all your excess body fat. The second is to detox your body, be that and we're talking mind is almost as important as your body. So to detox whatever it takes to lower your stress cortisol levels in your brain, be that yoga, be that meditative walking, be that sitting meditation, be that swimming, whatever that is that really enables you to clear your brain. That's what you need to be doing, hopefully at least an hour a day, especially for breast cancer. So, and of course, detoxing your body, which I'm sure you have talked about a lot with past guests, et cetera, of environmental toxins, of the chemicals in the food, and filtering your water. Women also, as one of the detox needs, they need to do breast massage. They need to, dry skin massage, keep the lymph moving in your breast, get the toxins out. So that's the second. The third is to use thermography annually to see if you have inflamed breast tissue. You don't want to be looking to see if you have a tumor yet. It's too late. You want to use thermograms every year to see if you have inflammation in your breast tissue, because thermography can show you that. And if you do, that's a warning sign. Get cracking. Detox your body, lose your excess weight. And of course, another one we've already talked about is don't take any progestin drugs. And that means no birth control drugs. That means do not have a progestin-laced IUD. They have a lot of those on the market now, maybe 4 or 5 brands. I'm not sure if they have different sizes yet, but they've put that nasty progestin chemical in the IUD. And that, of course, it's the same. The statistical studies are showing it's the same as popping a progestin pill every day. It raises your risk of breast cancer in a similar manner. So the excess body fat, no progestin drugs, use thermograms not to see if you have a tumor. Did I get breast cancer yet? No. You don't want a mammogram. That's another controversial piece. No mammograms. The mammograms are the most dangerous and unnecessary diagnostic screening or diagnostic test a woman can ever allow herself to have. And that is maybe the most controversial piece of this book. So that's another one. And the fifth is keep your vitamin D3, your vitamin D3 blood levels. Keep those blood levels above 60. There are studies that show us that there has never been a woman diagnosed with breast cancer who has a D3 blood level above 60. I mean, so, and of course, to get your blood level above 60, your D3 blood level above 60, can take some work, if you are above 60. Because it's much more difficult your body has a more difficult time synthesizing any supplements you're taking. Or if you're out in the sun and you're getting your D3 from either indoor tanning or outdoor tanning, and I recommend both. Safe indoor tanning, especially for people like myself or you who live in the middle Atlantic and Northeast, we don't get a lot of sun during the year. And so it's really important for us to use tanning, however we can do it, and or supplements in order to get the D3 above. Now, 4 of these simple prevention steps are blocking the suffocation of the mitochondria. The D3 prevention step is powering up your internal Wi-Fi system, as I like to say, so that if your breast cells start to suffocate, your internal Wi-Fi system, thanks to the D3, is strong enough to quickly call out for help to your immune cells, so they can come and help destroy this breast cell that's beginning to suffocate. So those are the 5.
All right. So your 5: lose weight, detox your brain, detox your body. Number 2, make sure you test, looking for inflamed breast tissue. No birth control, watch your IUDs, and D3 levels of above 60, which takes a little bit of work. So those are your 5 excellent steps.
Right.
So we got a couple of questions. And then, of course, if I don't ask you about the mammogram, I'll be shot later. So here we go. You'll see the question right there. Julie uses a diaphragm hormones that I bought at the drugstore, worked for years.
Yeah, that's how most of our parents, or people my age, that's how our parents, had their birth control going. There was only the diaphragm.
So good point here. And, we talk a little bit about foods, if you'd like. Stay away from estrogen foods. Soy is a huge one.
Well, that's real debatable. And I have not come down either way on that. The important thing, and most women, beginning with me as I started this research, are completely misinformed when it comes to hormones and breast cancer. There are so many women that think estrogen's bad, oh my gosh, oh my God, here we go, stay away from estrogen foods. And there's a reason that Julie, who's saying this, there's so many good reasons why she believes that, because the authorities out there in many cases will tell her that. But again, the cancer industry today does not, sadly, understand why one woman develops breast cancer and why another woman doesn't. So when they tell a woman to stay away from estrogen foods, they're guessing. And so what is happening instead is that the reason estrogen can be problematic and, quote, a risk factor in developing breast cancer is, especially around the menopausal years, is you have spikes in your estrogen, spikes in your progesterone. It goes up and down, because your body's trying to adjust from being childbearing, abilities to postmenopausal. And so you will often exist with high amounts of estrogen, much higher than you've ever had before in your life. And if you're eating foods that are filled with hormone-laden dairy products, hormone-laden meats, xenohormones that are in pesticides. If you know, there's wonderful groups called, such as the Silent Spring Institute in Newton, Massachusetts, and the Breast Cancer Fund. And now they call themselves Breast Cancer Prevention Partners. They're out of San Francisco. And those two groups especially have really looked at all of the environmental causes or risk factors of breast cancer. And they have found, thanks to Dr. Soto at Tufts, they have found that there are so many of these chemicals that are used in flame retardants, in cosmetics, and that act like they're chemicals, but they act like they're hormones. And we have a number of organs in our body, beginning with our breasts as well as our ovaries, that have those receptors, I call them doors, on the cells. And they will allow, they don't know the difference between your natural estrogen and those bovine growth hormones that are in the RBGH, that are in the milk, that are in the meat, that are in the pesticides. And so in America today, women, unless they're being careful, they are flooding their bodies with these chemical estrogens. And then they're turning 50 and their natural estrogen is now spiking. It's no longer even with their progestin. And once your hormones, and we're talking your estrogen and your progesterone hormones, are not balanced, that excess estrogen, which is usually the case in 99% of women, that is attacking and suffocating the power batteries in your breast cells. And again, if your D3 is not up there, when those power batteries start to suffocate, those mitochondria start to suffocate, you're developing your first breast cancer cell. And that's when it connects with the nucleus and that oncogene gets activated and it starts to duplicate mindlessly. And that's what Tom Seyfried, by putting together the metabolic theory, he really should win the Nobel Prize in the next few years. But the problem is the medical schools have to accept that this is valid science. And to the extent that chemical companies and pharmaceutical companies are influencing, with all of their money, they're influencing the curricula that is allowed to be taught in medical schools. So as long as they can influence that, you will never see the metabolic theory taught, because once it is adopted, it is going to absolutely destroy the profitability of today's cancer industry. So,
you bring up a great point, and we'll do a follow-up Facebook Live with somebody on estrogen detoxes. So clearly you would need to do an estrogen detox. It's encompassing a regular detox, but it's different in that there's specific pathways and there's formulas that we carry actually in the office. So we're definitely going to cover that, because my panel was lighting up on that one.
Sure. And what I say in my book is and you know about this, it's really important for a woman to have an estrogen a hormone balancing test, so she can find out, especially, as you get older, you want to add natural hormones to you, because you start to run out of all your progesterone and you start to run out of all your estrogen, and you kind of would still like to have a libido and have, decent skin and have a lot of good energy and have a good mood and stuff. You really want, in many cases, to add some natural estrogen and natural progesterone, and we're talking estriol, not estradiol, a weaker form of estrogen. But women need to not just do it blindly. It's really important to use Zava labs, or there are a number of labs, and they're not expensive, these tests, and you can do them at home. And one is a saliva, one's a urine, and I think the estrogen balancing is the saliva test. And so it basically will tell you that you're depleted in both, or that your estrogen, and that could be chemical as well as natural, is off the charts. And that's when, your estrogen detox comes into play, and women need it. There's another issue going on that I think pretty much only functional doctors are looking at this point, and that's using the estrogen metabolite test. That a number of women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, it turns out that they, for whatever reason, be it genetic or whatever reason, they are not very efficient in eliminating all of their processed or used up estrogen. So they've got all this toxic excess estrogen circulating through their body, and they're unaware of it, and it's hitting on the mitochondria in the breast cells or in the ovarian cells where that estrogen can get in. And so if they have an estrogen metabolite test, it will show them how efficient they are if they've got excess estrogen because they're not eliminating it well. And then there are ways and supplements that I'm sure you can talk about that can help a woman detox. Again, there's your estrogen detoxification. But she shouldn't just assume that her estrogen and her progesterone are imbalanced, especially if she's filtering her water, she's eating mainly organic food, grass-fed meat, et cetera, to take an estrogen balancing test. And so many women are afraid to start, when they get older, to start using natural estrogen. They're terrified, like it'll give me breast cancer. And so they suffer. And so those are the ones that need to take an estrogen balancing test to inform themselves. Do I have high estrogen? Is it higher than my progesterone or not? Or is everything low? And then hopefully they can start to enjoy life more.
All right, let's go for it. The panel went wild. Why no mammograms? I thought you were going to be calm, cool, and collected. I didn't know that I was going to have, oh my God, moments.
You're saying this?
Oh yeah. They're like, mammograms. Wait a minute. I go for mammogram every year. Whoa.
Well, everybody needs to buy this book. Okay.
Where can they get it?
They can get it on Amazon. They can get it at their local bookstore. Have them go order it if they don't. It's just recently out in the last couple of months. So if your bookstore doesn't have it, get them to order it. I'm going to be doing a lot of tours and conferences as soon as we're allowed outside to play again. But Barnes and Noble, Walmart, and also my website. If you want a signed full color, the launch edition that I'm sending out from my website has full color charts and graphs, which you don't. I don't know if you can. Yeah, there you go. So the charts and graphs are full color. Amazon, the others, they have black and white charts, which are fine. You can read them, but if you want the full color, go to my website. I'm also offering discounts because a lot of biology classes, college classes are ordering this now, as well as women's support groups, health groups, and book groups. So, if you order more than 7 books at a time, you get a discount, et cetera, et cetera. So why no mammograms? That's all of chapter 5. And there are lots of reasons. The first, every woman who's ever had a mammogram, I don't need to tell her, it's smack. It's who wants to have your boobs smashed by metal plates. Thank you very much. And some of the newer, fancier mammogram machines are less, abusive, but it's been known that if you've got a tumor in there, it can smack it open. Who wants that? Now you've got the chance of metastatic breast cancer happening. But probably the most important thing is there are dozens of studies out that show the difference in death from breast cancer of huge groups of women that have annual mammograms and huge groups of women that never have a mammogram. But both groups of women have annual clinical breast exams. There is no difference in the death rate. And if people sign up, I'm looking for this study. Here it is. I was just reading it yesterday, and I'm not even sure if it's in my book. There's so many studies out there. This is Canadian. This is called 25-year follow-up for breast cancer incidence and mortality of the Canadian National Breast Screening Study. It's a randomized screening trial. It was done way back in 2014, published in the British Medical Journal, okay? And it says There was no difference. You take 80,000 women, 40,000 have a mammogram every year for let's say 5 years, and that you're following. And the other group never has a mammogram. They both have annual clinical breast exams. And when they did a 25-year follow-up of these 80,000 women, there was no difference in death rates from breast cancer. There was a difference. 20% more of the women who were having their annual or biannual mammograms, you had 20% more women diagnosed with breast cancer, which means they were overdiagnosed. Nobody died. The death rate was the same. And there's a lot of research, and chapter 5 is packed with research in my book. So if anyone disagrees with what I'm saying, that's fine. You can go and look at where I'm getting my knowledge from. It's not my knowledge. And what you found is you have Switzerland has a national breast cancer panel that was put together, and they have recommended shutting down every mammogram clinic in the country as soon as possible. Canada has the same kind of study, and they are thinking about doing that. The Scandinavian countries have done similar kinds of studies. All of these studies are showing there is absolutely no difference in the death rate from breast cancer from women like the women who are apparently screaming, "Why not mammograms?" and someone like me who refuses to have a single mammogram. That our death rates from breast cancer are no different. So I choose to not, the other important thing is, and I talk a lot in my book about this, is I think it's for at least 40% of women today who have a mammogram that are told, 40% of women who are told because of their mammogram that they have breast cancer do not have breast cancer. They have what they're calling today stage 0 breast cancer. And I can't tell you how many women I have met when they hear about the research and now the book. "Oh, I should read that. I had breast cancer." And when I say to them, "What stage breast cancer?" But it was fine. They caught it early. I'm fine. It was years ago or whatever, or last year. And I say, "What stage was your diagnosis?" And if they even know, a lot of times it's such a scary thing, and I don't blame anybody. They don't want to know more. Just tell me, doctor, what to do, and I'll do it, and hopefully I'll be fine. But women who know, and if they say it was stage 0, I really want to say to them, you did not have breast cancer. You never had breast cancer. They treated you for something you did not have, and they took your money, and they, in some cases, took off your breast, and you never, never, never had breast cancer. Now, those are the women that often don't want to hear that, because that's a horrible thing to hear. I wouldn't want to hear it. But women need to know that it's really dangerous to have a mammogram. One, it's not going to benefit them. Not if they're doing annual clinical exams and a lot of breast self-exams, breast massages. So many women, they put their breasts into these mammoth, thick, padded cups. I mean, it's hard to find a flimsy bra these days. So they are overheated, and there's wire around them, or they're pressed in, and then they never touch them. I'm shocked, but women are sharing this with me. And so there's no movement of the breasts. So things are getting suffocated. And so for those women, there's just, there's this culture of ours is, mammograms is probably the worst of the whole situation, but mammograms are the massive major feeding system for today's cancer treatment industry. And that's why the pink ribbons are really all about, it's not about Breast Cancer Awareness Month. People are so aware of breast cancer, it's pathetic. National Breast Cancer Awareness Month is you be a good girl and you go get your mammogram. Your country and your family are depending on you not to disappoint them. And it's using guilt on women to go get their breasts smashed and then be overdiagnosed for no reason at all. So I guess, I wasn't even going to include mammograms in this book because it's not prevention. You're going in to see if you have breast cancer yet. Do you have it yet? That's not prevention. No one talks about prevention. But the American Cancer Society has brainwashed us into believing that a mammogram equals breast cancer prevention. It doesn't.
Wow. Talk about tackling the elephant in the room. Good job.
Yeah.
Dr. Anthony said this is, I'll just throw that back up to you. He's thanking you for the interview. So I'm getting buzzed up a lot. So you got about 2 minutes. So here it is. What 3 foods would you avoid? That was the question.
Well, you want to avoid a lot of carbohydrates and you want to avoid a lot of food. And carbohydrates means apples and grapes and peaches and carrots and peas as much as Ben and Jerry's ice cream and Mars bars. When you're talking about the metabolic theory of cancer and not hurting your mitochondria, not suffocating them, you want to keep the carbohydrates out of your eating every day as much as possible, because that's like feeding your body, it's all glucose, number one. And glucose is like a diesel fuel in your cells, and it makes your cells really dirty, and it really helps them suffocate much more easily. And suffocation, we know, is going to cause that first cancer cell. So I guess when it comes to foods, you want high natural fats, and that's very satiating. So you don't get hungry very often. And you want moderate protein, because you have too much protein, it's going to turn into carbohydrates. And you want to avoid as many carbohydrates as possible. Paleolithic man, they didn't grow waves of grain. They didn't have grains. They had some greens. And once in a while, they'd have some fruit in season. And they would go get the bison, in the fall when they were as fat as possible. So I guess if that is not a direct answer to that question, but I think it's the better answer to the question.
Sugar is definitely a feeder for acidity. Sugar is a feeder for cancer. It is promoting the environment for deleterious effects to the body, without question.
Yeah.
Essential fats, essential proteins, limitation of sugary type of carbohydrates, without question. One other question. I want you to say, how can they get in touch with you? How can they follow you? And tell them again how to get the book.
Well, go to bustingbreastcancer.com. You can sign up for my monthly, or it's pretty much monthly at this point. It might get more popular, but it's monthly newsletter. And you can also order your launch copy of the book from there. If you prefer to go to Amazon, go there. They've got the same copy, and they also have the ebook, as does Barnes and Noble and all of your local bookstores. I mean, it'd be helpful for you to go to your local bookstores and to encourage them to order the book, because people are going to want to buy the book. So that's really, really important. And do sign up for my newsletter, because it's showing all the different podcasts. I just did, as I mentioned earlier, Rob, the interview with Joe Mercola this past week, and that was sent out on his very popular newsletter this past Sunday. So people can right now Google, YouTube, or whatever, Mercola, Wadia-Ells, Busting Breast Cancer, and that one's there. I'm just doing a couple of these podcasts a week, so I'm hoping to be able to go to a lot of conferences. I kind of want to see people. I want to be able to meet people and talk with them and share the book. So if you're involved with conferences, invite me. I'll come. And also important, 20% of net sales, once I finish paying off the publishing costs, because this is independently published, in order to protect what's in here, not to give anybody other than myself editorial rights to this book. So if people, I've forgotten what I was going to say now. So anyway, you can get the book at various anywhere you're going to go. You can find this book at this point.
Outstanding. It's been my pleasure. What a intriguing topic. And, I have to tell you, controversial is great because it's thought promoting, and we all should be a little bit more analytical to our own health. Dr. Susan, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Definitely have to come back. Please, let's stay in touch. Everybody, okay. Dr. Rob Silverman, Proven Health Alternatives. Thanks so much again, Dr. Susan.
Thanks.